What's up, everyone? I'm Nathan.
Hey guys, I'm JT.
Hello, I'm Melissa.
Guys, welcome to our podcast on the 1977 in New York City, the coldest year in hell. And we're going to be going over the sociological significance throughout the film.
It's a great film. BBC always puts out great material.
True.
But nice to see you guys.
Good to see you
Good
too.
to see you all. I see.
Okay.
We're not on camera here.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
I was gonna start off from the beginning of the film. Where they talked about they set the scene basically in the Bronx of New York, and they're talking about how the city was literally crumbling. There was kids on their own running around in the streets because parents were just unable to keep up with the needs, I suppose. And it was...
The city was just in decay itself.
Yeah, because of poverty and...
Especially in predominant areas of color.
Mm-hmm.
Buildings were falling apart. Apartments were unlivable. And nobody wanted to live here, even though it was very affordable at the time. Well, for the time.
Yeah.
Because of lack of city funding
And
just fear and paranoia. Just
fear of what was happening at the time. There was multiple different murders of just gunmen, like the son of Sam, 44 caliber killer, who was just taking the city by storm and like just instilling fear in everyone.
And schools didn't have any rec centers or bands or anything for students to just do after school, so they were all left on just their own in the streets.
left on the street.
I guess, yeah. And
to fend for themselves.
Pretty much. And then, so the only positive thing that was for them was music. And this is when people started coming together in, like, their neighborhoods and just having hangout sessions, I guess. And everyone suddenly became one. There wasn't, like, you had to be this way or that way to come. You just had to show up and with your friends, and that's how people built community. Eventually, people did start bringing their DJ equipment, the little that they had at least.
So yeah, during this time, like different communities came together through music, like Melissa was saying, which sparked the birth of hip hop and a big uptick or upscale of just people in New York coming together in a new way. Yeah,
and along with punk and disco, all at the same time. So random. I mean, I would have never known this.
It was a musical upbringing of the city.
Yeah.
Which had its deeper sociological meanings, which we'll get into.
Yeah. Well, disco was getting super popular. There was dance halls, which was really big. Even today is pretty big. In New York, it was getting, like, New York City was packed with a lot of artists. Eventually, the disco clubs were getting bigger and bigger to the point where Lillian Carter, which the mother of the president of the United States at the time, was there, and she was smoking a joint, which I thought was pretty funny. But yeah, so it got super popular, and bands like how Nathan was saying, like a lot of punk bands were also getting more popular there. Bands like Blondie started there.
The Ramones.
Yeah, the Ramones.
Who else? Television.
Yeah, the Talking Heads.
Talking Heads.
Yeah, and so they knew it was getting big once Blondie had a #1 in Australia.
Yeah, I remember that part.
No, that was down
they were
on
saying,
the east side too.
Yeah,
and they were saying if you can be #1 in any country, you can be #1 everywhere.
Anywhere, yeah.
Which is true. It kind of sparked this idea of like, oh wow, like I want to start playing guitar and make a band, and because it was such a profitable idea at the time.
Yeah.
And this idea of like celebrities being commodified kind of sparked.
And it kind of relates back to some stuff we learned. Like, it made me think of P.T. Barnum and like how he talks about no publicity is bad publicity.
Yeah.
So like for Blondie to blow up in Australia, that means like
maybe because a lot of people also hated them too. A lot of people thought that
misunderstood music.
Yeah, a lot of people thought that it was just like
it wasn't very talented because it was like 3 or 4 chords, you know, and then people singing.
Yeah, and so Studio 54 in New York was
disco.
huge. And so it's like stuff that was happening in Studio 54 was already happening a long time before that, but that studio made it more popular. So people started gathering there, and like lots of lots of drugs and sex and all that stuff was happening at those clubs.
I mean, it was pretty much the 80s. Everyone thinks of the 80s being fueled with drugs.
Yeah, no, this was the 70s.
We were getting close. But I liked what I learned about Studio 54 because it was after, you know, the Stonewall riots, which was really big, and the I guess they would call it, in the gay community, gay or lesbian community at the time, we would call it something different now, but that's what they were saying it was. And so all these people started to come to Studio 54 and other clubs where they were playing disco, and they were able to like be themselves. After this riot happened, like more people were coming out. They were less afraid because they knew that there was like a safe space that they could go to and express their sexuality. A lot of people, they talked about in the film, they actually would run away, like young teens and young adults would run away from home. Like
Ohio and like the Midwest, they'd come from all over the country to go to New York.
It unlocked like a new hub of acceptance.
And they would say that they felt home and that they're with their family.
Yeah. And this is like in stark contrast of what Governor Cuomo was at the time was campaigning, because he had a campaign against
Ed Koch.
Koch, yeah.
The mayoral race was Ed Koch versus Mario Cuomo.
Campaign was vote for Cuomo, not the homo, and it was basically because he wanted the re-election.
I forgot the name of the lady, but she was in a crochet hat. It was like
Bella Abzug.
Yeah, and then Ed Koch was like,
and during this time,
the gay man. So it was a gay man versus the straight man, and the city was divided.
And ironically, Bella Abzug was probably the most fit for the job, but she was a woman, and during this time, it was still
and more Republican.
Yeah, it was just like unheard of for her to take New York City by storm.
She was
on the opposite side of the spectrum of Cuomo.
I see,
yeah. She wanted to bring the city back.
Yeah, but eventually Cuomo did lose the election.
Okay, so all these events from 1977 in New York City set the stage for gentrification and urban renewal efforts that would transform New York in the decades to follow.
Yeah.
And
it seemed like as the 3 genres of music became more discovered, the areas of the city were kind of reevaluated. Like uptown was the disco scene, and then you go downtown towards the Bowery, which was more of like, I guess, like a working class area, and then across the way in Brooklyn and the Bronx was hip hop. So like
Harlem,
no one was really going over to hip hop at this time, but
they were in their own world in a sense too, in this huge city of upcoming. And eventually
a lot of the punks moved from, like how you're talking about the environment growing, the urban environment growing. a lot of the people from the punk scene moved over to Brooklyn because it was like the only place in New York for these people to actually afford to live while they can work on their like artistic craft.
It was where they started.
And more people appreciated it there too, because everywhere else it was like not very...
This was their sound. It was organic to the time.
Yeah, and then I like how you pointed out getting pushed out, because I think it relates a lot to how disco and punk and hip hop were actually a form of folk culture in a way, because these people were able to create authentic music and had outlets because of the time of New York while all of this crisis was going on. So usually like people are able to create art or music during times of turmoil or stress.
It became their safe haven.
Yeah, like an outlet, for like all this like traumatic stuff happening on like the blackout, people looting, the son of Sam like going around and like murdering people for like he targeted like lovers, It shows like
during these periods of hardship that the emergence of hip-hop, punk, and disco was a powerful catalyst for the cultural expression, like you're saying, through folk culture and later into mass and popular culture. But how these such expressions can just provide social commentary or, like you said, an outlet for the marginalized communities that were the founders and creators of these genres of music.
Yeah, and graffiti too.
Oh, the graffiti
I know how
artists.
you mentioned hip hop. It made me think about like the train graffiti, like because like people like wouldn't even
into it. Yeah.
They wouldn't even go onto the trains because they were like scared because of all of the like, the tagging and all that stuff on the trains. But then it talks about in the film how when people would go by and see their cars go with like the whole entire cars painted, they would be like in like astonishment. They'd be
this
like,
concept.
Oh my God. It's
called like the dark figure of crime, where it's like I've learned about it in some classes where it's like instilled through media and through the news. Like they know people are watching the news, and it's like to keep people afraid of crime so they don't so you're literally afraid of other people and like people for stuff that might not even be true or exaggerated. And it's just instilled in people, through even the graffiti is like, wow, they're so afraid of like something. But I mean, they had a point during this time period because the son of Sam was still out there. Yeah, he was sending like threats to the police, like written
to the Daily
notes.
Mail.
Yeah, so
I wanted to mention too, like about the blackout and how the blackout. While it did lead to like a lot of looting and a lot of
even
crime,
arson,
I think that it's important to also mention that some people weren't robbing out of like just because like for like why not? It was also people were stealing DJ equipment, and so a lot of
the up and coming DJs.
A lot of them came up from that because they finally had access to it. This was no longer inaccessible to them because I mean it was right there,
Right.
And I think that this pushed a lot of people to like
DJ Disco Wiz. So
I think that it's I feel like that's kind of a note on how a lot of art can be. We don't know how like artistic people can be because they lack the resources to have it. I think if more people had access to it, we would have a lot better art.
Definitely. Yeah. Just to continue on what you're saying, I remember KRS-One, one of the original hip-hop creators, was saying how he was even in fear because he was seeing even people like doctors and teachers out
the housewives,
looting amongst everyone else. So it was really this time where like everyone really was equals in like.
Yeah. Did you have like a quote?
I did,
that we were talking about earlier?
He said, it was someone from the film that said, "I never realized the veneer of civilization was that thin." And
seriously.
It's crazy because, it's true, like, everyone kind of, it was all like every man for themselves type of thing.
It's like,
this was also during, like, right before this blackout, there was a ton of layoffs of police officers, so they were all just kind of like,
firefighters, teachers.
Yeah, and so everyone was just kind of like, well, I mean, what do you want me to do? You laid me off.
Mm-hmm. It really goes to show, like, we have these, like, social boundaries or, like, social class differences, like, instilled in our society that are kind of, like you said, just so thin, and, like, the snap of a finger, the drop of a hat, like, can change that drastically, or, like, goes to show, like, oh, what do these classifications really mean to our society?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something to consider when, I guess, if there's, like, a lack of resources, and how low the, I guess, there was it the poverty, or how high the poverty rates were, because this many people acted on these, I guess, that opportunity to steal and all that. And it was unfortunate for a lot of the small business owners, because they did lose a ton of money out of that.
Yeah, it shows the thin line between the social cohesion and caused from the blackout, but it also shows, like, the sense of community in some areas, that, like, people are coming together, and like you said, most people kind of being smart about it were only, like, taking things they really needed, as opposed to, like,
because, like, a lot of people did steal,
or,
just
like,
because, like, why not? Honestly, a lot of people would.
There was organized things, like, or targeted, like, jewelry stores and stuff,
yeah,
too.
Department stores, everything was on the table. There was nothing untouched, pretty much. Yeah, and so this 25-hour blackout made a huge difference in like, culture for New York City. Catapulted a lot of new careers, I think, but also was detrimental to many businesses at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, so, like, with the blackouts, the murder, the low funding.
Yeah, it really highlighted the ways that gentrification is, well, because later
it sparked a whole wave of
will happen, because all these people are being, like, extremely, like, influenced by all the stuff that's going on, the turmoil that's going on in the city, especially, like, around music. It didn't talk about the hip hop as much as the disco and the punk scene, because they kind of still stayed in Brooklyn. I remember watching this film recently called Meet Me in the Bathroom, and it actually talks about the gentrification of Brooklyn. So right now it's, like, almost like 20 years prior, where the folk culture turning into popular culture is slowly trickling down and kind of, like, moving down and then going to the right, and eventually it's going to push over towards Brooklyn. So, like, with the disco scene, there was once the movie what was it called, Saturday Night Fever with John Travolta came out, that was kind of like when disco became commodified, and everyone wanted to be a part of it now. And then after 77, with those four groups, with the Ramones, Blondie, Television, you know,
Talking Heads,
like
the CBGBs.
Yeah, like, once those start to become found out, it slowly shifted.
People are like, wait a minute.
Yeah, into popular culture, and all these people saw these opportunities to make money. So, like, once people saw opportunities to make money, the rent was increasing, the people in the clubs weren't the same.
The outfits got more expensive. Like, every part of it. Every part of it was commodified.
Yeah.
Even the people, like the bands, the famous people themselves, it's really instilled this idea of creating celebrities or making celebrities into commodities.
Yeah. I mean, even Son of Sam sold himself out.
Yeah. And he was smiling. It was a whole era of
just for a parking ticket.
He was really, like, it was pretty bizarre how
no, that's definitely true. I didn't think of it that way. He sold himself out.
But the cultural movements that blossomed during this time, such as the punk and hip hop,
super important.
eras began to draw attention, like you said, to previously overlooked neighborhoods.
Yeah. I feel like
all these outsiders were like, oh, we need to go to New York City. We need, like, that's where we need to be.
Yeah, and I feel like it has a lot to do with, like, the term, like, nostalgia. Like, I never really, like, understood, like, I forgot where I heard it, but it said, like, someone told me, like, once, like, nostalgia is dead. And I'm like, what does that mean? It's like people trying to relive these experiences that already happened.
You're chasing that feeling, that warm, fuzzy feeling that you had at once as a kid.
It's just no longer organic.
Yeah.
It's just kind of...
That's good. So,
and it all relates to, like, the commodification of
everything.
Art, music,
whatever
housing.
People love.
I want to live in a loft.
Looks,
it's $5,000 now.
That looks appealing.
You know?
Yeah.
And like the rich people who are more part of like the high culture, they kind of want to be a part of it. And it's like really, it's kind of like a
they want
slap
that sense
to the
of,
face to the artists.
They want that sense of community.
You don't understand.
Yeah, it reminds me of that. This is probably like a little bit off topic, but it kind of reminds me of that little store on the Haight.
No, exactly.
Haight
Ashbury in general.
And that whole street, it used to be so like, I guess, organic, kind of like.
It was the like
it was
during the '60s or what was it called? The Summer of Love.
The Summer of Love.
And so
so this movie's like it tells the story of every urban environment.
Or are you talking about that one?
The little tie-dye?
Yeah, the Rainbow Store.
It's like you can get
Love
one
on
of their
Haight
tie-dye sweater for like $150, and I am
$200.
And I'm not
$500.
That is like so it's like that
handmade.
Exactly.
And then you walk outside and it's all the like the OGs and like the
it's like people like
houseless
sitting on the
folks
streets,
living there, and
so it's like that commodification of nostalgia.
Or it's like, the people that are wanting to relive that.
So now people that actually created that culture can't afford to.
And you see people selling stuff out of their vans or playing music out of their vans on Haight Street because they know why they're there. They're like they're there for the real reason. But all of this commodification has come up around them. Yeah. And kind of made them have to resort to doing what they do.
Because it's the American way.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow. No, that's a good connection to like our city.
Yeah.
Which is like Haight and Ashbury. Like bingo. That's
I was just there like last weekend, so it just
and it ties into like street art and murals.
Yeah.
That reflect communities' cultural heritage sometimes or social concerns, acting as a form of folk expression, like you're saying.
Yeah. Even the graffiti too, because like that was seen as like scary, negative, like not
but to
safe.
Them, it's like, oh, I'm doing my thing, like this is my art, and like they would have to do it on a moving train, like in the pitch black,
and they had to keep repainting it because someone was always like,
and now people are getting paid thousands of dollars to do murals. You know,
so even like these forms of expression have been gentrified, or commodified because it's like, oh,
so
like
you can't
we
do anything
want
without
that
a license now. So.
Hip hop and like these forms of music emerged from just the block parties and community gatherings in the Bronx. Hip hop was a grassroots cultural movement that incorporated the elements of African American tradition, including DJing and rapping, that just blew up into something everyone wanted a taste of.
And symbiotically, all of these movements are going on at once. So it's just like, it was such a cool film to watch and learn about.
That's what made the year of 1977 in New York so important, sociologically, because of how much social emergence and change was really taking place.
Was it good though?
I mean, now we can say it is.
Now we can say it wasn't good.
But for the people living through it, it was definitely a silver lining in a sense.
I think it's important. So like, we can take we can take like the study of urban environments and like how like cultures shift and change, commodify, gentrify, all this stuff, and we can apply it to other urban environments. Like San Francisco, Portland,
Los Angeles,
Seattle,
yeah.
Los Angeles. It's like
Yeah.
people need to see this stuff.
Now that we
And it's everywhere, and now we're
There's
just like abnormal
there's a rhythm to
people
it.
because we
Yeah.
know what's going on.
Inviting people that aren't necessarily like
And you can-
in education or in.
You
Yeah.
can see it happening while it's happening, whereas
Yeah.
before, back then, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it seems like it can even seem like it's the apocalypse, or
Yeah.
like because so much hardship. It was coming from hardship, people coming together from hardship,
Yeah.
and like really putting their blood, sweat, and tears into their craft and their work. So that's the
Mhm.
what you can't get when it is commodified and when it is brought into the popular or mass culture. It becomes kind of the replication or the cookie cutter of it, because like you said, we're chasing that original feeling, that original taste of it that was like so genuine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nostalgia is dead.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Maybe they were right.
Yeah. Well, anyways, thanks for listening to our
Yeah.
podcast.
Thanks.
Yeah. I think that was
Good discussion.